Welcome. In this video I'm going to talk about a new feature that's being beta tested on the Raspberry Pi. So the feature is the network install. So to install a system on a Raspberry Pi, you take an SD card and you stick it in a Mac or PC or Linux computer and you write your system on the SD card and then you insert it in the Pi to run it. So that becomes a problem for someone that doesn't have another computer. So with the network install, you can take a Raspberry Pi, you can stick an SD card in it and install the system on it just using the Pi. So this is in beta right now, it's for testing, so it can't be used for its intended purpose until they start putting this on the Pi itself, which when it's out of beta, they'll add that to the Pi's firmware, and then you can use this. But right now, you'll need another computer to enable this feature. So this runs on the Raspberry Pi 4 and the Raspberry Pi 400. So I currently have this connected up to power. I have a monitor plugged in. You do need Ethernet, so you'll need an Ethernet cable to hook it into your router. So if you're used to using wireless, that may be something you need to add. And then you need a keyboard hooked up to it. So I have a wireless keyboard, and it has a dongle. You can't use Bluetooth for this feature. So the card I'm using is a Samsung Pro Endurance, and I'll put a link below to this if you're interested in that card. And if you use that link, it helps support the channel. So let's switch over to my computer. Okay, so I'm on a Mac here, but you can do the same thing on a PC. And I have the article pulled up here, and I'll put a link below to this article. And you can just read the article. I'm pretty much going to be doing the steps in it. But some people like to watch the process before they take it on themselves. And this is a beta, so it could potentially screw up your computer. So that's something to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do is open up the Raspberry Pi Imager. So I've already installed that. And you can find that on the Raspberry Pi website. And this is the latest version as of the date I'm recording this. It's version 1.7.1. I'll hit Choose OS. I'll scroll down to Miscellaneous Utility Images, and then I'll go to Beta Test Bootloader. So you'll see there's Bootloader and Beta Test Bootloader. If you want to revert back to the previous bootloader, you can do the same procedure I'm going to show you now, which is Bootloader. But I'll click on Beta Test Bootloader, and then we have three different options here, and this is what you want it to boot from normally. So I'll choose SD card boot. I'll insert my SD card into my computer. I'll hit Choose Storage. I'll choose that here. I'll hit Write. It says all existing data on SD card will be erased. I'll say yes. Once my password, I'll enter that in. Okay, that finished. I'll hit Continue. I'll remove the SD card. So now I'm going to switch over to the Raspberry Pi. I'll take the SD card. I'm going to turn off my Pi. I'll insert the SD card into the Pi. I'll power it on. And now the screen turned green. That means the bootloader is updated. So I'll turn this off and I'll take that SD card out. So now I'll turn it back on again and I have no SD card in it. And now a screen has popped up. It says install Raspberry Pi OS on the Raspberry Pi Imager. Press and hold Shift to start the install process. So on my keyboard, I'll press and hold Shift. Okay, and then on the pink part of the screen, the lower part, it says waiting for space key. So you want to hold down Shift and then press space. And it says waiting for network. So I've already plugged in the Ethernet cable. So now it's going to connect up to the network and it's going to download the Raspberry Pi installer. It looks like it's 22 megabytes. Okay, that finished downloading. It says starting installer. Okay, and here we have the Raspberry Pi installer, just like we have when we run it on a Mac or PC. So I said you need a keyboard plugged in. It looks like it needs a mouse too, unless you can use the keyboard. But this does not seem to be keyboard enabled, so I'm going to use the mouse. I'll hit Choose OS, see what we should do here. Let's do Raspberry Pi OS Other. So let's do Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. So I'll say Choose Storage. I'll insert the SD card, and this is the one I used for the bootloader, but it should erase it. I'll say Choose Storage. I'll select that, and then I'll hit Write. It says all data will be erased. Do you want to continue? I'll say yes. So now it's going to download the image and write it to the SD card, and this will take a while, so I'm going to speed the video up here. Okay, so it finished, and now it's rebooting. So now we're booted into Raspberry Pi OS, and here we have the startup wizard where you can set up your locale, time zone, things like that. So I think this is going to be a great feature of the Pi. It's going to make it less dependent upon Macs or PCs or other computers to create the SD cards. So that did take a while to do the install. I think a neat feature of this would be if you could have a single computer that is a cache for the Raspberry Pi images. So say this was in a school lab, so say you had 20 Raspberry Pi computers. It'd be nice if you could give each kid an SD card. They would sit down at a station, stick it in a Raspberry Pi. They could do a network boot and install their own fresh system on the Pi. And if there's some sort of caching system, it could make it very efficient, like if you could have one Raspberry Pi be the cache for all of this. So I've done a number of other videos on the Raspberry Pi, and I'll put a link below in the description to my playlist where you can find those other videos. Otherwise, that's all for this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.